I was sitting on the toilet, scrolling aimlessly through my phone when it happened. The first thing I heard was a loud, unmistakable gush. It was as if the pipes had come alive, spitting and splashing water everywhere. My eyes widened as I slowly stood up, my heart starting to race as the sound of water pouring out grew louder. It wasn't a small leak. No, this was something far worse, a burst pipe. Water was flooding the bathroom floor, rushing toward the door with relentless speed. I took a quick look at the sink, hoping for some miracle, but it was already too late. There was no stopping it. I scrambled for my phone, hands shaking as I tried to dial the plumber I had used a few times before. But when I looked down, I saw that the water was rising quickly, already beginning to creep into the hallway. Panic gripped me for a second, but I pushed it away. I had to keep it together. I quickly pressed the call button. The phone rang, and I was about to lose hope when someone finally picked up on the other end. "Hello," a voice said, calm but slightly distracted. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could hear the panic slipping through. "I've got an emergency. My pipes just burst and there's water everywhere. Can you send someone over right away?" The voice on the other end paused for a moment. "I can get someone over there in about an hour, maybe less. I'll send Peter. He's the best we've got." "Please hurry," I said, the urgency in my voice clear. "I don't know how much longer I can keep the water from getting worse." I hung up, standing there frozen for a moment. My mind raced. I didn't even know where to begin. Everything was happening so fast. The sound of the water seemed to grow louder as I stood there, paralyzed. I grabbed a towel and tossed it on the floor in a half-hearted attempt to stop the flooding, but it was no use. The water kept rising. As I stood there, panic rising in my chest, I heard something else, an all-too-familiar sound. A loud creak echoed through the apartment. I knew that sound. It was coming from the bed. It had been squeaking for weeks now, but I hadn't had time to fix it. But now it was mocking me, adding to the chaos of the situation. My frustration only deepened. Not only did I have water flooding my apartment, but the bed was practically falling apart under the weight of its own squeaks. It was the last straw. I felt like I was losing control, everything slipping away, and I didn't know what to do next. I grabbed the towel again, trying to stem the tide of water, but it felt useless. I needed help, someone to come and fix this mess. As if on cue, I heard the sound of a truck pulling up outside. I rushed to the door, but before I could open it, I paused. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected anyone so soon. My pulse quickened as I glanced at the mess I'd left behind. Water everywhere, towels strewn across the floor. I was in no condition to let a stranger into my apartment, let alone have someone come and fix the mess I'd caused. But I had no choice. I opened the door, and there he was. A man in his late 30s, wearing a blue uniform with the company logo on it. He had a calm, composed expression as he looked me over. His smile was polite, yet there was something about him, something I couldn't quite place. "I'm here to fix the leak," he said smoothly, his voice deep and professional. "You must be the one who called. Got a bit of a flood going on here, huh?" I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, even as he walked past me toward the bathroom. He seemed unfazed by the mess, and I was both relieved and embarrassed at the same time. "Please, just fix it," I said, my voice trembling. "Before this gets worse." He didn't respond right away, but I heard him move around the bathroom, his tools clanking as he worked. It seemed like he knew exactly what he was doing. I watched him through the doorway, unsure of what to do next. The tension in my body was overwhelming. I needed the situation to end, needed the water to stop, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on than just a broken pipe. "Everything seems fine," the plumber said after a few moments, his voice low. He turned to look at me, his eyes meeting mine. "But I think we might need to tighten something under the sink. It's not going to take long." I nodded again, trying to hide my discomfort. The way he looked at me was unsettling. It wasn't just the professional gaze of someone focused on their work. It was something more, something deeper. "Thanks," I said, trying to make my voice sound normal. "I really appreciate it." He didn't respond right away, his eyes still on mine, though he gave a slight nod. There was a strange moment of silence between us, filled with a kind of tension I couldn't explain. And then, the unexpected happened. "I'll need to take a look at your bed as well," he said, his voice casual. "I noticed the squeaks earlier. If you don't mind, I can fix that while I'm here." I blinked, taken aback by the sudden request. "The bed?" I asked, confused. Why would you need to fix that?" "It's all part of the job," he replied smoothly, his tone still calm but now tinged with something that made me uneasy. He took a step closer, his eyes not leaving mine. "I'm here to help you with everything, miss. Just a little more work, and it'll all be done." I swallowed hard, unsure of how to react. Part of me wanted to refuse, but the other part, the part that was too overwhelmed to think straight, felt the tension between us building, like something I couldn't escape. His words hung in the air, a strange invitation that made my heart beat faster. I had invited him in to fix a simple leak, but now he was suggesting he take care of my bed as well, something that seemed so personal, so intimate. I should have said no. I should have told him to leave, that it wasn't his job, that I didn't need his help with my bed. But for some reason, I didn't. His gaze never left mine as he stepped closer, his eyes dark and unreadable. I felt a sudden tightness in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to back away, to escape, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, the weight of his stare anchoring me where I stood. "I'm just here to help," he said, his voice low and smooth, almost comforting in a way that made me feel even more uncertain. His words should have reassured me, but instead, they felt like a carefully calculated attempt to get closer, to push past the boundaries I hadn't even realized I had put up. I don't think it's necessary," I said, trying to sound confident, trying to regain some control over the situation. But my voice faltered, betraying my anxiety. I cleared my throat, trying to steady myself. "I can take care of it. It's just a squeak." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "It's no trouble at all. You don't need to worry about it. Let me take care of everything." The words hung between us like a promise. I wanted to protest, to tell him that I didn't need his help, that it wasn't appropriate. But somehow, I couldn't bring myself to speak. He was too close, his gaze too intense, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. Before I could protest further, he gently reached out, his hand brushing my arm. It was a soft, tentative touch, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I could feel the warmth of his hand against my skin, his fingers lingering just a moment longer than necessary, and I couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward him. I looked up, meeting his gaze, and in that moment, everything else faded away. The flood, the leak, the creaking bed, they didn't matter anymore. It was just the two of us, standing in the middle of my living room, and something about the way he looked at me made me feel both exposed and wanted. "You're not alone, you know," he murmured, his voice so soft it almost felt like a secret between us. "I'm here to help you, to take care of you." I didn't know what to say. His words were like a magnet, pulling me in even though every instinct in my body told me to pull away. But I didn't. I stood there, rooted to the spot, as his hand slowly moved from my arm to my back. The touch was gentle, but it held a weight to it, a certain intention that made my breath catch in my throat. For a brief moment, I thought about stepping away, about telling him to stop. But then he leaned in closer, his face mere inches from mine, and I felt my heart race even faster. His eyes searched mine, looking for something I didn't fully understand. "Trust me," he whispered, the words more of a request than an order. I didn't answer him. I couldn't. His presence was too overwhelming, and I found myself drawn to him in a way that terrified me. It was like I was no longer in control, like everything I had worked to keep in place was unraveling in his hands. Before I could think of anything else, his lips were on mine, soft and tentative at first, but then with more certainty, more force. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, my hands moving to his chest as I allowed myself to feel the heat of his body against mine. I shouldn't have kissed him. I knew that. But I couldn't stop. I was lost in the moment, lost in the way his touch made everything else seem irrelevant. The world outside the apartment ceased to exist. There was just him, just the way his hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss. I could feel the tension building between us, thick and palpable, as if the very air we breathed was charged with something neither of us could resist. My hands moved to his neck, pulling him closer as if I couldn't get enough. And just as quickly as it began, the kiss broke, leaving us both breathless. For a moment we stood there, neither of us speaking. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. I had crossed a line I hadn't even realized existed until now. I didn't mean to, I whispered, my voice shaky as I pulled away, my hands still trembling. But he didn't let me go far. His fingers gently cupped my chin, tilting my head up so I was forced to meet his eyes. You didn't have to mean it, he said, his voice quiet but full of a knowing that made me shiver. Sometimes, the things we don't mean are the things we need the most. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of what we had just done. And yet, somehow, I couldn't bring myself to step away. Are you going to fix the bed? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, desperate to change the subject, to find something, anything to ground me again. He smiled, a slow, almost knowing smile. The bed, he said, his tone softening. We'll take care of it together. But first, let me help you with the mess in the other room. His words hung in the air like an invitation. And as much as I wanted to pull away, as much as I wanted to run from the situation I had put myself in, I found myself nodding. Maybe this was the kind of help I needed. Maybe it was the kind of help I had been craving without even realizing it.